Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I'd just like to welcome you all to the first of what will be several work groups discussing the changes required under HB 2415. And that would specifically be related to electronic processes and essentially harmonizing them throughout the state. So for those who don't recall, HB 2415 recently passed the Oregon legislature, I believe it was 2021, and was signed into law by the governor. The bill took effect in September 25th of 2021, and portions of the bill are not operative until January 1st, 2025, just so you're all aware. A copy of the enrolled bill is attached to this issue page. The bill will create minimum standards and more statewide consistency for electronic processes for reviewing plans, issuing permits, and performing field inspections. In addition, by the year 2025, all municipalities that administer and enforce a building inspection program will be required to use the division's electronic system or an equivalent system for certain information and services. The system will include, but need not be limited to, the following: licensing, permitting, inspections, and other relevant information, access to forms, electronic submission of and payment for permit applications, electronic submissions of plans for review, electronic receipt of plan approvals and permits, electronic issuance of minor label or other appropriate permits, access to permit and inspection processes, receiving requests for and scheduling inspections, tracking of corrections and granting of approvals, performance of electronic field inspections, construction progress inspections, and on-site verification, compliance with building code requirements, and the coordination and tracking of construction-related services. At the January 25th, 2022 Rules Advisory Committee meeting, the division discussed the results of a survey of jurisdictions regarding their electronic process capabilities and the obstacles that they face. Now the division would like feedback on how to conduct a survey of contractors and design professionals in the construction industry. So just as a matter of discussion, the division is generally interested to learn what electronic systems design professionals and building contractors are currently using and any limitations to assist in its creation of statewide consistency and the required statewide system for jurisdictions. The division has prepared a draft of a survey to be completed by design professionals and building contractors. This draft survey is enclosed within these materials. We are interested in feedback from the work group regarding this survey. So again, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your participation. Just as a matter of general housekeeping, if you would like to speak, could you please use the raise hand function? That's generally the easiest way to do these meetings when there are multiple individuals connected online. And please refrain from using the chat function, as we don't really capture those responses in any sort of long-term form, whereas any responses provided verbally, we can capture those and we're recording those in minutes. So thank you all. And so just to get started, if you would like to take a look at the questionnaire specifically, we would like to discuss that and sort of dive into the issues that that raises. And if you would like to speak up again, press the raise hand function.
I would say, sorry, Tyler, well, let's go around and let's do some introductions. I think
Certainly.
We're looking at this survey is for design professionals. There are going to be two surveys, one for contractors, and then one for design professionals. So this one is more focused on the upfront part of the development process, the preliminary reviews, and then the electronic plan review and kind of what issues are posed by that. So I'm assuming that most of the folks here are involved in that, but let's go ahead and do introductions. I'm Selena Patterson. I manage the e-permitting program at Building Codes Division, and turn it over to Brian, who I see next on the screen.
Hi there. I think that's me. Bill Clemens, Douglas County Building Department.
Great.
And Brian Baker. We're having some trouble hearing you, Brian. Sorry about that. All right, we can come back to Brian. Doug Morgan.
Hi, everybody. Doug Morgan. I'm with the City of Portland. I'm an engineering manager there.
And Daryl Fuller.
Good afternoon, Daryl Fuller. with the Oregon State Association of Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors.
And Randy Scheid.
Hi, Randy Scheid, Director of Building Safety Division, Deschutes County, and building official for Deschutes County, Sisters, and Brookline.
Thank you. Sean Miller.
Yeah, so Sean Miller, I represent the Associated Builders and Contractors and the Independent Electrical Contractors. Thanks.
And Matt Roselle.
Hi, I'm Matt Roselle. I'm the Building Codes Administrator for Clackamas County.
And Kimberly MacArthur.
Hello, everybody. I'm the building official for the city of Beaverton.
We also have Brett Cook connected.
Hi, everybody. Brett Cook, Jackson County Building Department.
And Joel Osborne.
Hi, let's see. I work for the city of Eugene on their building and permit systems and the electronic plan review system. Before that, I was an architect practicing in Eugene also.
And Lacey Garrett.
Lacey Garrett, Northwest Natural Marketing Manager.
Excellent. And Brian Baker, I'm not sure if you're connected by phone or not.
I'm on computer.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, Brian Baker. I work for Northwest Natural as well. I am a customer field services supervisor of Southwest Portland area.
Excellent. And we have one person connected by phone. Do you mind identifying yourself?
Thanks. This is Michael Van Dyke on behalf of the Oregon Building Officials Association.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tyler Glaze. I'm a policy analyst with the Building Codes Division, working here with Selena on this project. And we also have connected Laura Burns. She doesn't have to introduce herself.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm Laura Burns. I work at BCD and the Policy and Technical Services section.
Excellent. And we also have Terry Watson and Ian Peck. They are also policy analysts with the Building Codes Division.
So I don't know, can you share your screen with the survey information on that? And maybe we can just go through as a group and talk through that proposed survey and just see if we can add on to it, make any changes to it.
Absolutely. Let me do that. Or Laura, would you like to facilitate that, or I can?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
I'll bring up first just the website one, and then I'll get the Word one open. Share. Yep. Okay. Is that it?
Yes, it is.
Yay.
So again, as we did the survey for local jurisdictions and kind of, I think, got a really good snapshot of a good number of the jurisdictions in the state and kind of what the status of their electronic permitting, plan review, inspection services are at this point in time. And so the idea was to craft two separate surveys, one for the design professionals and one for the contractors, to get a sense of how people are doing business, what their experience has been with interfacing with government electronically in the development process, and what things people would like to see or could improve those processes. And so we kind of threw up on the wall some of the things that maybe we would be asking the design professionals. And then I think that Monday afternoon, there's another work group where we'll be focusing on the survey for the contractors. So the first set of questions up here, and again, pipe in and chime in if you've got any suggestions of more. You all probably know the processes, the upfront processes way better than we do at Building Codes Division. But the first set of things was kind of that, what for the design community, what types of barriers are they facing in leading up to submitting applications? And are any of those barriers things that could be addressed with technology? And so I would just throw out to the group is that, do we think those are adequate questions? Is there something that should be added there or changed there?
I'm sorry, can I ask a step back question real quick? I thought I just heard you say that this meeting was for design professionals and there's another contractors meeting next week. Did I catch that correctly or did I misunderstand?
No, you got that correctly. Monday afternoon, there's another committee, another work group that is more geared towards designing the contractor survey. So and for that one, we've developed some materials that are more geared towards or contractors, I should say, towards the end of the process that has to do with permitting and inspection. So this first survey is more about the upfront of applications and then the plan review portion of things. And then the other survey would be more about the permitting and inspection side of things.
Okay, so I think I'm probably more appropriate in the other meeting as a plumbing contractor representative. Is there a way that you can put, because I don't have that on my calendar, could I get an invite to that meeting?
Absolutely.
And I'll put my contact information into the chat. I'll probably just sort of listen in on this, but this doesn't appear to be the one that I'm probably supposed to be at. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and if they're certainly, as a contractor, you probably do deal with the plan review process also. So certainly that part of things might be applicable to you as well. But again, so chime in if you do see anything. Anybody else have any thoughts about what types of things we might be asking about the upfront portion? So again, before we get to plan review, that initial application and what that looks like electronically, what types of things do we want to get from customers or from designers or from contractors about what they might like to see in that process?
Randy, go ahead. You're raising your hand.
So, one of the main questions we get from design professionals is how to flatten their stamp to protect their stamp and their IP, documents, but still allow us to review them and make markups on them. And that seems to be something that I always hear my plans examiners and the permit techs talking to professionals about, is how to flatten and protect their stamp while still allowing markups. And I don't know if that belongs in this question or whether it's something farther on in the process.
So would we? I guess I'm wondering, how do we ask that question, or what would we be asking about that? Like, have you experienced problems with, how to protect your stamp during the plan review submission process? Is that kind of along the line?
I believe that's their main concern is really the protection of their intellectual property and their stamp and their, and their design. And so, that's something I think we need to alleviate those fears with to have more full participation.
That actually brings up a really good question, Randy, because one of the things that we did a little bit of digging in as part of e-permitting, not as part of this RAC, was just we kind of looked around the country to find out what different jurisdictions are doing about protecting plans about copyright online. And there's kind of an interesting shift that's going on. Some people, don't let anybody open any plans online. some people do kind of what we're doing in e-permitting, which is that we post the plans online, but only the people who submitted them can open them. And then there are some jurisdictions that are starting to actually completely open up plans so that anybody who comes in online can open them. We spoke to a couple of jurisdictions in California that are actually doing that. So I wonder if we should put in it kind of goes to what you're talking about there, is maybe we should put in a couple of questions about how design professionals feel about protecting copyright and protecting their signatures, whether, and I don't know whether that's asking like what level of protection do you feel is appropriate online for planning documents or for plans, for electronic plans? Does that seem like a good question?
I would think so. Yeah. We have forward facing and backward facing pages. And for instance, we don't put floor plans on because people don't need to see where the nursery is, or in marijuana facilities where the money is kept or anything else. So we feel that not only the IP and the copyright, but also just the floor plan sometimes would give more information than we want out there, for nefarious reasons, right?
Yeah, and I've heard both sides of that, because there are also some jurisdictions who are, at least during the design process, want everything unlocked so that everybody participating in the process can get there and look at it. So again, I think that would be, maybe we have to have a series of questions, just like, what do you think is the appropriate level of online protection? Complete, you can't see anything. You can see it during the design process. You can see it if you uploaded it. We can ask a series of questions like that. I think that would be just good to know from their point of view. So,
and we have had some facilities like, some of our large social media facilities that we have their data warehouses here who feel that for instance, their evaporative cooling system was proprietary and a trade secret. That gain them efficiencies and therefore market, So
gotcha.
we were not allowed to put that forward.
Got it. Well, I think that's a great suggestion and something we won't wordsmith it here, but I think we can come up with a series of questions that concern that protection of copyright and signatures. Good suggestion. Any other thoughts about some of the stuff, before plan review of like what types of, well, just as local jurisdictions, any things that you hear from folks, either that people want electronically upfront, or that you feel would like to have, or that you think would be a good idea, or just that are potentially issues for folks in the process of actually submitting those applications or getting the approvals that they need in order to submit their applications.
Doug Morgan, I believe you're the next with your hand up.
Just to build on Randy's issue about the signatures, it seems that is an issue. We see a real lack of compliance with submitting digital signatures, particularly from engineers. There are some differences between the engineer requirements and the architect's requirements. And it seems that there's a barrier there for engineers to submit digital signatures. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it might be worth asking a question about that. Compliance with that for us has been extremely low. The other thing we might think about is when you have the results, what do you want to understand about the respondents to this survey?
Yeah.
You want some information about, are they an engineer, an architect, a designer? What areas of the state do they do majority of their work in? There might be some real differences in needs between the rural and urban areas, for example. So just thinking about that a bit ahead of time and trying to understand what might be useful information when you're trying to dissect and understand the results could be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Not at rural, urban, also maybe the types of projects. Are they more commercial, more residential? I think that's also a good thought. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And
yep.
I guess this is more about design professionals. Well, you could ask about like their discipline. Are they, mechanical, plumbing, structural, that kind of thing?
Okay, good idea. Yep. I guess maybe one way to also approach this is, as local jurisdictions, are there things that you have problems getting upfront from people, like before, when you get initial applications? Are there things that you're finding that people are consistently not doing, and so maybe that's a pain point for folks, or that where you find you're trying to get information from folks, or their applications are coming incomplete because they're not doing X, Y, or Z, and maybe that from that we could get to some questions that we could ask folks about, what's causing that. Any thoughts?
Lacey, if you want to respond on this issue or wait until we bring up the next subject, you're welcome to speak.
I just had a question. Brian Baker and I are trying to figure out, I don't know that this is the right area for the two of us to sit on some of this stuff. So I'm wondering if there is another work session that's going to talk about the downstream kind of process with Northwest Natural and the utility side of things, because none of this has anything relevant to us. And both him and I are extremely busy, so I don't want to just spend, the time if it's really, because there's nothing really on here at this point that has to do with like the utility side of it. So I'm trying to figure out, is there working sessions around the utility side coming up? Because it sounds like
there must have been some, and I apologize, there must have been some communication glitch on our end of things. There is a separate work group that will be scheduled for dealing with that for the processes around the utilities.
Okay, so I have this one scheduled. So I think both him and I are gonna log out of this because it just doesn't make sense. And then the next one was for Monday, but I don't believe that's correct for us either.
No, you're correct. That is not. That's
okay.
Yeah, we'll reach out to you. You should wait. So it's clear you want to be involved in obviously that utility discussion. That is a separate work group. So it sounds like there may have been a little confusion in maybe how we sent out emails about this. So.
Okay. Yes, if you could reach out to me when you guys have that meeting, that would be greatly appreciated.
We will.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Lacey.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Yep.
And Matt Rosell, you have your hand raised. Or Doug Morgan.
I think Matt's just still on mute. Maybe he doesn't know it. Matt, are you there? No, maybe we lost Matt. Okay, well, I'll go ahead. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the front end of the process, and I don't have too much there other than once they get right to that point where they're submitting an application. I think there are some design professionals will have preferences or a desire for certain features in a electronic submittal process or system. Certainly things around like file formats that are accepted, how those files are uploaded, whether it has to be one sheet, one file at a time, or multiple sheets can be uploaded at a time. We've had some real passionate feedback around how files are named and then tracked through the process. So that's maybe a little bit in the weeds, but to maybe at least ask a question about features in a system or functionality that design professionals think are important, or would want to be consistent, for example.
Well, like, yeah, one thing might be, what format do you prefer to provide files, and is there a particular, like, do you think it's more that the ask is just that people be consistent about the thing, that it would be nice if jurisdictions were consistent about what they were asking for? Or do you get the sense that people have a preference about what exactly they would be naming things or what format they'd be providing stuff in.
I think both.
Yeah, okay.
Inconsistent. I mean, for design professionals that work in multiple jurisdictions, that's always a frustration, is they have to learn one set of processes for one jurisdiction, and then the next application they're making, they got to remember what that jurisdiction requires. So that's certainly an issue. But I think they'll also have some feedback on what features are really helpful, at least for those that have done a lot of electronic submittals. I think they will have some good feedback for us.
Okay. So maybe also some just open, unended questions that are more like, what features of an electronic process would be the most helpful to you in completing, an electronic plan review process. So I'm not here. It doesn't seem like folks don't have too many suggestions on so we're kind of focusing on the plan review. Do we think that there are questions to be asked besides the plan review in terms of the lead up to the applications, in terms of, people's needing to collect other types of documentation as they submit their applications? Or do we really think that there's nothing that we don't really need to ask that?
So, and I'm not sure, this is Kimberly with the City of Beaverton, if you can see those of us who maybe have our hands raised because you're sharing potentially.
I personally can't.
Okay.
But I don't know, Tyler, are you tracking that?
I can see it, yes.
Okay.
Kimberly, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to echo what Doug was talking about, I believe. I just want to kind of share an experience with you because for me, it was very impactful. I obviously work for the City of Beaverton. I actually have a pretty big project going on in my home. I'm adding an ADU. I have aging parents that are living with me, and I had to submit to another jurisdiction electronically. And this is important because it's funny, but then not funny too. That jurisdiction's electronic permit submittal process was so different and so cumbersome. And I actually even reached out to fellow plans examiners to kind of help me get through the process, because it was so confusing, and even the naming conventions were difficult, and it took like 3 times to get it through. And so because I had that experience, that was some of my motivation for wanting to belong to this work group, because here I am, I'm in this industry, and it was a massive struggle, and I have to reach out to my counterparts at work who were still just, as puzzled as I was. And so I think no matter what we do, we have a really clear, concise set of and easy to understand, and that we're all kind of, I know we can't all operate exactly alike, but I would like to see some consistency across the board, because it was a real eye-opener to me, and it was funny but yet not funny too. And I thought, here I am in this industry, what if a homeowner who's not in this industry, or even another architect or engineer trying to submit to these various different jurisdictions, it was like night and day different.
So Kimberly, with that, so it sounds like naming conventions, I heard you say that. What other
naming conventions? For example, at Beaverton, we allow everything to come in. We use Bluebeam, and everything comes in. This jurisdiction, you had to submit sheet by sheet by sheet, which was time consuming. And I didn't understand why it was necessary. And I mean, we do not have any issues in Beaverton taking it all together as one package. And so it was a nightmare, actually. So they had a very specific naming convention, which also wasn't easy to understand. And it was so bad that I was like, okay, guys, at my work, I was like, am I stuck on slow because I'm not following what they're asking? And they were just as puzzled as I was. And it was several phone calls to this jurisdiction, and then us, and it's my own personal project, but as my cohorts at work, trying to like piece it all together.
And the communication, so as you were kind of trying to navigate through this, was part of the issue the way in which the information was presented to you also? Like,
no, it was not clear. It was not clear how you were to do it, and everything had to be broke out. Everything had to be broke out.
And and when you went to look for the information, was that provided through a website? Was that provided through a packet, or how did that information?
Yeah, it was provided through a website.
Okay.
And kudos to this jurisdiction, because I did get a really great permit tech, and I knew I was able to reach out to her and have some conversations with her around it, but it was not clear on their website. It was really difficult to navigate, and and everybody's system is different, right? Like, we're not all on the same permit tracking system, but anywhere we can work together as a group to be consistent, naming conventions, etc. And then it still was super unclear to me, like, why make it so difficult that you have to download one page at a time? You couldn't do it as a packet, and I kind of get their thinking behind it, but we take it in as a packet in Beaverton. It's super easy, no problem. And so it was interesting to kind of be on the other side of the window, so to speak.
Well, and then I guess I'll ask one more question about that. So that sounded like that was about uploading the plans in the app. Was it easy to navigate finding the actual like application materials, like how to even get started before you get to that spot? Was the place where you hit the stumbling block the point at which you got the plan, had to submit the plans? And then from that also, how did you get responses to your plan approvals? Was that then a little bit better?
The responses to the plan approvals was easy. It was the downloading the page by page by page and having to kind of parse out different pieces of my submittal from just the application page, one download, then the checklist, another download, and then each plan. The engineering packet could be one download. Each plan sheet had to be downloaded, and structural plan sheets had to be parsed out and downloaded one by one. They had a very specific naming convention that you could not deviate from. And then it took several days to even respond back whether or not they accepted how you submitted it.
Okay. And was that response an automated response through a system, or was it an email? Did it become personal after you uploaded stuff and then you were dealing with an individual, or was it a system response?
System response.
A system response. Okay.
But I did make contact with the permit tech, and she was able also to respond on the website, and she was helpful in kind of walking through, but it was really difficult.
That actually also leads to me. I know occasionally we, e-permitting, people looking for information. Sometimes it's hard to search through documents that have already been uploaded, and maybe we need to ask some questions about that. That happens more on the planning side of things, where they've got a gazillion documents, but it can also happen on the building side of things. And so that may be something that we also want to ask some questions about, have they had challenges finding information on governmental websites through documents, or et cetera. That I think might be useful to ask also. So,
yes.
Yeah. Any Tyler, I don't know does somebody else have their hand up?
Yes, Randy, you are the next up.
I just wanted to echo, I think what Doug and Kimberly were talking about is that, we have different statutory requirements for an architect stamping something versus an engineer stamping something. For instance, an engineer, if they stamp the top page of a bound submittal, then that's all they're required to do, where architects have to stamp every page. We're an e-permitting Acela user, and the entire county is, except for one large city in our county, and they require each individual document, like Kimberly was talking about, uploaded individually. We say we want all the construction plans, even the A's and the S's together, and we want the trusses together, and we want the engineering together to be uploaded separately and in packets. And that way, the stamp that comes with the engineering covers that packet, and we don't have confusion about what that engineer, what was under his work. Is there other documents? So I think those are critical things that we need to figure out going forward. And there are other review programs and electronic permitting programs that apparently are way different than the state one, which we use and adore.
Thank you. And I believe next up was Doug Morgan.
Yeah, just thinking more about the front end of the process and listening to Kimberly, makes me realize that all these different systems have a learning curve to them. Jurisdictions have different softwares that they're using, different processes. And so there is a lot of information that an applicant needs to gain and understand just to get into the application process and complete that. So one question might be, what is most helpful in terms of receiving that information? How it's sort of like delivering training to our customers out there, and how do they want to receive that training? What's most effective for them? Is it information on the website? Is it short videos? Is it information that's embedded within the software program itself as you step through the various steps in the process? Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Yep.
Thank you. Kimberly?
I didn't mean to still have my hand up.
Okay. All right. Doesn't look like anyone else has their hands up on that issue.
Okay, can we look back at some of the questions we had on the survey or proposed survey? So I think a lot of what we've been talking about is the submittal of the documents through people's website. What about things that we should be asking about the revisions and the markup process? I know that different jurisdictions handle that differently in terms of, whether, like just at Building Codes Division, we have some reviewers who like to, email back and forth with whoever submitted the plans, get everything worked out, and then publish a final set of plans where everything, they're not really marked up because they've been doing a back and forth. But I know other people work very differently. And I'm wondering if there are things that we should be asking the design professionals about that process to kind of get at what works and what works for them in that process, or where, what things should we be moving towards in delivering those services. Anybody have thoughts about that? Or from your own jurisdiction, just kind of thinking about, are there pain points in either the revision process or the, getting information back as you're reviewing plans and trying to get to that finished plan set.
Doug, go ahead.
We use project docs, and overall, I'd say it's a little rigid in how it can be used. I think a lot of times we have a desire to work closer with an applicant to mark up plans, or maybe it's even things that on the city side we can mark up, put information on the plans ourselves, and then just be able to issue the permit. But the system doesn't lend itself to that very well. So it's like almost any comment, any little change has to be sent back to the applicant, and then they have to upload a new plan. So that's just one of those pinch points that we see. When we were reviewing things all on paper, it was much easier there at a counter with a customer across the table from you to work together and do those kinds of minor little adjustments and markups right then and there, and then give the customer a permit and they're out the door. So I'm not sure how to put that into a question for the customer. I'm sure they would like the ability to be able to do that. It just streamlines the process and saves everybody time. But it's something we've been challenged to deliver on at this point.
And maybe the questions are broader, more like, what are your do you have some examples of review processes that have worked particularly well, where, some things that have worked well, and maybe some examples of things that have worked not as well. And again, not focusing on particular systems, but more, processes of that back and forth. Yeah, I don't know how to ask it either.
Yeah, no, I think you're on the right track. It's kind of like one of the first comments I had made was to ask a question kind of like about what are the features you think would be important in a system.
Yeah. And again, this kind of goes with that. I mean, in terms of, I know that different software has different ways of dealing with revisions, and are there things that we should be asking the designers and the people submitting plans about the process, the revision, the more formal revision process? Or again, is it more just an open-ended, see what people come back with?
I don't have anything specific I can come up with, so I guess that means it's open-ended. unless others have some ideas.
What about the experience of, is this currently a pain point for people, the issue of having plans on site, and if you've gone through an electronic process, then like who prints out the plans and how do they get on site? Is that an issue for folks that people are experiencing, and is that something we should be asking about?
Randy, go ahead.
So we worked with our Central Oregon Home Builders Association and with our Central Oregon Realtors Association on this when we started going to electronic plan review. Even before e-permitting, we had our own. And what we put into place was that we didn't have large format color printers. So we made a rule that says you will have at least one 11 by 17 set of in color plans, and then you can have the full size set that's black and white. And the reason why we do this is because what our plans examiners do during plan review, the notes they make on it, those are critical, and those are notes we want not only our people to see, but the framers to see, all the subs to see. So when it's in black and white, they don't pop. and we always do in red. So that was why we did that. We at first had a little bit of pushback, but now I think everyone's accepted that because most people can do 11 by 17 in color at their office. And then for the bigger ones, for better detail areas and stuff, that's when you get a full size, 24 by 36 black and white, where we can see the details, or as the code says, sufficient detail.
Is that other jurisdictions? Are you all doing comparable things on that? Or is this a place where we need to be asking questions or not, actually?
We're not doing it in Beaverton, but I really like his idea.
So is that maybe something that we should be looking at as a potential part of like the long-term consistency process, is thinking about the idea of potentially saying, here's a standard of like everybody, as part of the process should be printing out, 11 by 17 colors and large black and white and having those on site?
I got to tell you, to get that requirement, it really took building a coalition and approaching them that way, because it's one more thing. But when you tell them how critical it is, especially with some of the generic plans have so much what we call computer puke on them, you just lose everything. They have details that may not even apply to that plan on the plan review.
Kimberly, go ahead.
I would agree with that. I mean, I really like the idea personally, because things do get lost. And when it's all in black and white, it all starts to, and you have guys that's all they're doing all day long is doing inspections, and they miss things when it's not. So for me, I really like the idea. And I also think that, okay, yes, they have to print an 11 by 17 in color, but let's also think about all the money that we've saved them, because it's hundreds of dollars to submit 4 sets of drawings, for example, for a building. So I feel like it's not too big of an ask.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, we've put the responsibility for printing plans back on the customer or the applicant. So when we issue the approval, we issue a PDF of the approved plan set, and then the owner, applicant, contractor, doesn't matter who, but somebody on the owner's side is supposed to print off a full set of the approved plans and have those on the job site. I'm not close enough to the inspection side of our operation to say what kind of compliance or issues are coming up with that. I think we're able to work around a lot of that because our inspectors in the field have electronic devices, iPads, and they can pull up the approved plans in the field. We're in Portland, we have good internet connectivity and all that. That may not be the same elsewhere, though.
So maybe on this, for the survey, we ask something about, is there, maybe we just ask, whether folks have any, difficulty with printing them out in black and white, or would it be a barrier to print out an 11 by 17 color print as well? Or what do people think? Or is this something best that maybe we don't ask about, and is more just looking for like, well, how do we make, fairly consistent statewide standards for it potentially?
I guess to ask it another way, do you all think that that's something that most of these places are capable of doing pretty easily, or is it, and it would save money in the long term, i.e. that it makes sense to at least consider it being a statewide standard, or do you think it's something we should inquire about and see what their capabilities are? Go ahead, Randy.
We could certainly ask the question, but to us, I mean, we don't try to just fill up a plan with useless information. If we're making a note, we're trying to head someone off before they actually build it. We have to say, no, 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 see the note, you know? And so that's why we put notes in there to warn them of things that, you know, that you'd rather figure out before it's built. And so I think it's critical. We also had iPads, and then we had flip phones, and then we went to smartphones and iPads and created hotspots, and all the guys have migrated away from our iPads and now just use the flip phones, and they can do the back office stuff, you know, through Acela, but it's not the same real estate screen size, right?
Yeah. All right, so maybe we'll ask something more about along the lines of what the capacity is. Like, you know, are you able to print, you know, do you currently print black and white sets of plans? Would you be able to do color sets of plans, or, you know, just kind of ask about people's capabilities and then go from there?
And maybe what size of color they have the capability of printing.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of follow up along like that, just from the jurisdictional point of view. And again, we'll see if we can flip it around to think about the other side of things. What kinds of issues do come up in terms of, you know, when you're out in the field and there are electronic plans and something's gone wrong? What kinds of issues are we dealing with that there may be some solutions for? Is it really just people not having looked at the plans in advance?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're building off of, sometimes they're not building off of the officially approved set of plans. So they might be missing some revisions that were made, or they might be missing some comments that were added to the plans by a reviewer. That does happen. I don't think it's a frequent problem, but it does happen.
And I don't know how we would get at asking that questions, like, how does your organization ensure that you're working off an approved set of plans? I don't know that we benefit from asking that.
Yeah, well, maybe it's like, you know, how do you ensure the approved set of plans are available in the field at the job site and accessible to everybody?
I guess we could also ask if there are barriers for them identifying the approved set of plans through the online process. I mean, I do think that occasionally I've heard where people are looking for, trying to figure out where they're approved. I guess we could ask something to that effect, is like, have you ever had problems accessing your approved set of plans in order to get them out into the field or provide them to your, you know, crews? Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
To aid in that consistency, and we've done this for a long time, is our naming conventions are pretty loose on the way in, because after we review it, we delete those, and we have our own naming conventions on the way out that start with reviewed and then what they are. And that way there's no confusion. People are not downloading a set of uploaded plans that was not reviewed, that may have been changed. The only ones capable for them to even download are reviewed sets of plans. We dump the rest.
Yeah, so maybe that's kind of our question, is have they had issues? Have they ever had problems finding those approved sets? Because it may be that other jurisdictions or some places are not being so clear in you know, helping folks know which ones are the ones they're supposed to be using. So I think then at the end of this, we just had some more generic questions, but are there other things that people can think of that that you all would like to know or get feedback on in terms of electronic processes from folks that are doing the designing?
Doug, go ahead.
You know, I think the applicants and design professionals want to be able to track the status of their permit and the various reviews that occur on it. During the review process, they want to know when a particular review is, in progress, when it's completed, when there's comments that they need to respond to, and just be able to track all that well. And so I guess the question is, how do they want to do that? Or do they have preferences about what do they want to be able to track and how to access that kind of information?
Like what status, tracking the status of review? Do they like to get emails? Do they want to see it on the website? Do they want all of those avenues? Yeah, that's a good one.
Exactly.
Okay. Other thoughts on things that we may want to hear back from people, design professionals about? The other kind of baseline question that we have is like, I think we have a pretty good pulse on, we knew who to contact for local jurisdictions to survey them. I think we have a pretty good set of folks in the contractor, for contractors on that side of the industry to be able to send those surveys out. Design professionals a little bit less. Do people have thoughts on who or where we go to get the mailing list basically for this, or the email list for this particular survey?
Kimberly, go ahead.
I think it would be helpful if, I can easily pull a list of who submits, basically. Maybe we could all, I don't think it would hurt for all of us to kind of pull a list together and send it off to a designated person, and you can use that list. I think there's no better way almost.
So through local jurisdictions, if we provide the survey and you pull the emails of the different people who have been submitting plans, and just see if we can gather them that way?
Yeah, we could I could easily pull a list and send it off to you.
Okay.
I think that would be the easiest and a time saver, really. I'd be curious to see what others thought, but that to me is easy enough.
Those of us that use e-permitting, we could run the same reports, which you can, of our customers. But I would say, like Kimberly may have been saying, is that our plans examiners are going to have the most, the relationships with these design professionals.
Mm-hmm. So for folks on this committee, would everybody feel comfortable just, forwarding a list of design professionals that submit to us, and then we can reach out to other folks through OBOA and see if we can get people to provide us email lists? Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, and then Osbills, right? Could you get something from them?
That would be good too, yep.
Yeah, I was going to say Portland AIA and the Structural Engineers Association would also be good resources for that.
Okay, great. Good, well that sounds like a plan. Does anybody, I know that you're probably all really wanting to go for 2 hours, but I don't think we probably need 2 hours unless folks have other feedback on this. Any other thoughts of something we might be missing or that might need to be added to this? I think we'll go through and make some changes based upon the comments. I think there were some good suggestions of places we can flesh this out a little bit. And then maybe we'll send out a working document to the group, and people, if you think of anything that we forgot, or if as we flesh it out there, you have comments and stuff, maybe we can refine it that way. It might also be good if we, it doesn't seem like we really had many design professionals in this group. So maybe we can rustle up one or two to also just take a look at the survey and see if they can, have some additional feedback as well. And then before we actually send it out to folks, I think that will probably help. So.
Doug, you were trying to say something.
I think getting an email list drawn from permit applicants, that's a good idea. Do you have a sense of when you're hoping to have that information pulled together?
Well, I think our first step would be to definitely to send out the draft of this, which I think we can do within, the next week or so, and then get some feedback upon that. So I think if you can start pulling those lists and get them to us within several weeks, is that doable?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you didn't want it next week, because that is not going to happen.
No, we can have several weeks. There's not a huge rush on this. We'll also be working on the contractor survey, so we've got a little bit of time too. So,
who would we send it to? The list. I can pull mine fairly easy, so I'm just asking.
I'm wondering if we, Laura, do you want to can you be the collector of those?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm eating.
So just design professionals, engineers, architects, or designers, everyone who's submitting?
I think that's a good question. I think we could do everybody who's submitting, for the documents, and then there may be a little bit of overlap with the folks who also get the contractor survey, because I'm sure you have some that are contractors, but that's okay. That gives them, they don't have to answer it, and it gives them a chance to answer both sets of questions because both of them affect them.
So April 1st, we went to electronic only, and of course we're going to help out the moms and pops, right? We're not leaving anyone behind, but I tell you, it's the contractors who've been growling the most. The design professionals have been pretty on board with it, but our contractors are growling. Right before this meeting, I had one call me up to growl about electronic submittals.
Well, and so I think we should be reaching out to them, and maybe we'll get, part of it may just be the pain process of change, right? But let's get their feedback too. So
it's also an efficiency we need in today's remote working, because I have my plans examiners only come in 2 days a week, work 3 days at home. My field inspectors are not coming in at all. So by doing electronically, they have access to these electronic plans at their desktop, at their home. So when a field inspector calls and says, "Hey, what were you thinking here?" they can pull it up rather than having to go find a paper plan that's in the office. It's much more seamless this way. So I'm trying to sell it as a win-win for the contractors and get them to get on board.
Well, I think the suggestion that we also kind of get a sense of who it is that's answering is probably helpful. I wonder if we're going to, I bet there is a big difference between some of the contractor community and some of the design professionals that have been using online tools to do designs, right? Versus the contractors. And then also the urban and rural, there is definitely some difference between the sets of tools and the expectations, right? So, but we'll try to gather that information as we do the survey. I think we'll be good to see what's going on that way. Although sometimes it's surprising.
Sorry, Matt Roselle, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, sorry, my internet keeps cutting in and out. So I missed part of the meeting, and you may have already said this, but I feel like the architects, engineers, designers are pretty up to speed on this, at least from our perspective in Clackamas County, and it hasn't really been an issue. It is the contractors and the homeowners that we really struggle with, and getting the feedback from them that, what they could use to help them through these processes, I think would be valuable, because, the designers, architects, engineers, they do this for a living, and they're good at it. We very rarely get any feedback from them. They just know what to expect and move forward. So that's it. Thank you.
Yep. And I think that was one of the suggestions, was that we ask how people want to receive that information about how to navigate. And I think, yes, it'll be really important from the homeowners and the contractors, especially, to find out, what's going to help them the most to navigate systems. So.
Kimberly, you have your hand up.
I think one of the first questions that should be asked is a little pull down. Are you a contractor, architect, homeowner? And that'll really help us, I think, to kind of weed out where there's some, potentially real issues that we may be able to address.
Well, and that also brings up a good question, because you mentioned homeowner there, and I don't know if we've been thinking that that would be a big lift to get that home, to get to homeowners. We could send that out. I mean, if
contractor, whatever we choose as a group, but I think it would be helpful to kind of see who, when we send the survey out, we can kind of divvy them up, architects, engineers, contractors.
Well, do people think there'd be valuable to send it to homeowners who have submitted to you all, so they've been through the process and get a sense, or do we want to confine it to the design professionals? I think
contractors, design professionals, architects, engineers.
I think contractors, most of the homeowners that are doing this are, it's a one-time deal for them for the most part. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm a little afraid to hear what they would have to say. So.
The same thing with the contractors. We need to put a caveat that going back to paper plans is not an option. Because that's what you're going to hear.
Maybe not in the survey. We don't have to put the caveat. I mean, I think realistically, we're not going back to paper plans, right? This is about electronic processes, but yeah.
And just so everyone can see in the chat function, there is Laura's email address. If you want to, when you run those lists, if you want to send those on over to her, that would be very much appreciated.
Any other thoughts? Sounds like maybe we have a plan going forward. We'll get out a draft to the group for the work group of the next version and look for some input through email. And if you all can be working on an email list for us in terms of who to send the survey to, we'll do some reaching out to the Architects Association and the engineers, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you all so much for participating. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, especially on a Friday afternoon. Thank you.
Absolutely.